Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. I had a real pleasurable day yesterday. I drove to the Ngong Hills for an event where Kenyan were hosting the AFD, which is the Agence Française de Développement, I believe. The CEO, Remy Rieu, and his team. And on Kenyan's side, we had the MD, Rebecca Miano, and her key officers as well. And have a look at this tweet from Matilda Schneider. Spectacular visit of Ngong Hills wind farm with long-term partner Kenyan, she said. Another illustration of Kenya's extraordinary clean energy mix. And this is where there is a wind farm, and it's still the biggest operational one in the region. Of course, Lake Turkana will overtake them by a wide margin once they're able to evacuate the power from Turkana. It, of course, took me to Isaac Dinesen, Karen Blixen, out of Africa, which was made into an amazing movie. And she wrote in that book, I had a farm in Africa at the foot of the Ngong Hills. Go and watch that little video. This is exactly where we were situated. We weren't at the foot, we were at the top looking down, but you get a sense of what it looks like. The equator runs across these highlands 100 miles to the north, and the farm lay at an altitude of over 6,000 feet. In the daytime, you felt that you had got high up, near to the sun, but the early mornings and evenings were limpid and restful, and the nights were cold. It's been rather cold in Arabia of late, though yesterday there was a bit of remission. To give you a flavour of the landscape, have a look at this video that's up. That is a short video, 1 minute and 40 seconds. But you can see the perspective down to the Rift Valley, you can see how high we are. And you can imagine in your mind that moment when she discovered that place and had her farm there. And it's written very beautifully about it. I did a joint interview with the CEO of the AFD and the MD of Kenya, and that link is also on the website. And it was a very interesting interview as well. Really was a very worthwhile visit, and an interesting one as well. The AFD have committed a considerable amount of money to Kenya and have been very supportive. Them and JICA ranks 1, AFD 2. Trump is playing chicken with China. It will be important and telling to see how this plays out. That's Ray Dalio, and I think that's correct. Guess which G7 country has the highest tariffs? Clue, it's not Canada, Japan, or any of the European nations. And it is, of course, the US. Negative debt pile swells by $1 trillion as trade clouds gather. Own thoughts. I tweeted about Kilimanjaro. I read that report which said the ice cap has really reduced. But then I got a tweet from Forkwurkers who said, we summited on the 6th of June 2018. The scene is totally different. Snowcap all over, pure bliss. So that's a positive. Without change, something sleeps inside us and seldom awakens. The sleeper must awaken. Elon Musk. And that took me back to it as a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. Kevin and I worked together for 6 years, and we know images like this can reinforce the importance of protecting the kings of Africa. This is David Yarrow. Pretty arresting photograph. And then Simon, who tweets about many interesting things, tweeted a map compares the historic and the current range of lions. Only about 34,000 remain in the wild. People see the Neolithic builders of Stonehenge as howling barbarians times when they were very learned, and it has been forgotten. Indeed, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has ended his 2-day trip to China, and he really is coordinating with Xi Jinping. But I found an interesting story in Asia Times by Pepe Escobar, who's speculating that the US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo knows the importance of rare earth elements. Apparently some rare earths were found not too far from where base has their mine. And North Korea has reportedly found one of the world's biggest deposits, 150 kilometers from Pyongyang. Is this another factor behind the recent thaw with the US? Currently, China is believed to control over 95% of global production of rare earth metals, with an estimated 55 million tons in deposits. North Korea, for its part, holds at least 20 million tons. Way apart from a Netflix-style plot twist, a quite possible narrative is Pompeo impressing on Kim the beauty of a sweet US-brokered rare earth elements deal, but China and Russia must be locked out or else. As much as the Trump administration may be late in the game, it's unthinkable Washington would abandon a piece of the metal action. Interesting perspective. The Pope said children must be able to play, study, and grow in a peaceful environment. Woe to anyone who stifles their joyful impulse to hope. POTUS, if you're weak, which some people would like you to be, if you're really, really pathetically weak, the country is going to be overrun with millions of people. And if you are strong, then you don't have any heart. That's a tough dilemma. Perhaps I'd rather be strong, he said. And then I think the best explanation that I've found in this whole matter, and the rights and wrongs are there for all to see. The open question is, have Western electorates moved so far that this is now the new normal? And The Spectator says Trump is vice signaling over immigration and it's going to work, and this is the question. The stories are filed, the pictures are posted, and the media verdict is almost unanimous. Separating children from their parents is wrong, it is un-American, and President Donald Trump is going to suffer for it. His administration is baby snatching. The optics are terrible, say the hyperventilating PR men in Washington know-alls. But if everybody stops to breathe for a moment, they should stop to recognize that on this issue, on as so much else, Trump is winning the politics. Call it vice signaling. The President and Kirstjen Nielsen are making clear that even if it means being seen to be inhuman, they are taking voter concerns about massive immigration seriously. There is a clear political upside to this, despite or because of the negative headlines. Zero tolerance on illegal immigration is popular, even if some of the unpleasant consequences are not. Fair point. The Guardian yesterday printed in their newspaper a list of 34,361 refugees who are known to have died trying to make it to Europe. It's a huge number, isn't it? It's just terrible. New Panama Papers, the aftermath 2 years after the Panama Papers investigation. A fresh document leak from Mossack Fonseca reveals the aftermath. Najib Razak has a starring role. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar falling sharply, 115.28. Dollar index 95.28. Japanese yen 110.44. Swiss franc 0.9967. The pound 131.21. That's under pressure. The Australian dollar 0.7356. India rupee 68.13. South Korean won 11.1383. That softened up as well. Brazilian real 377.10. Egyptian pound 17.8699. South African rand 13.757. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index, which has moved to a fresh 2018 high. Euro dollar, which is a fresh 2018 low. And then not far off my initial target, which was 114.50. Joe Wiesenthal, who I follow on Twitter, says Jack, meaning Jack Dorsey of Twitter, is having probably one of the most amazing years of any executive ever. How many people have ever been CEO of two public companies, both of which are up nearly 100% in less than 6 months? 2nd of January, Twitter was one of my trade recommendations for the year. I said I prefer to look for opportunities below the headliners. I like Twitter at $24. Your market recap from Charlie Bilello: Facebook all-time high, Amazon all-time high, Netflix all-time high, Google all-time high. The band is back together, he said. Gold last at $12.63. That's fallen off lately, hasn't it? Crude oil, $64.69. That's down sharply as well. There must have been an uptick in the trade war linguistics and language, given these recent price movements today. Emerging markets, I wrote on the 14th of May. This is all the ingredients for baking a good old-fashioned crisis. Look at this Argentine disaster in one chart. Peso, 100-year bond and Merval index have all declined double digits this year. IMF board approves Argentina's $50 billion standby arrangement. Again, going back to that article on the 14th of May, I said at this point in the cycle, the IMF's importance for many countries cannot be gainsaid. Turkey's lira crashed to all-time lows, that was on May. Countries that have been flying by the seat of their pants are now being caught with their pants down. This is all the ingredients for baking a good old-fashioned crisis. And I think I wasn't wrong. Sub-Saharan Africa, they think he'll be the candidate. This is Joseph Kabila. Yes, so do I. How long before the world's youngest continent revolts, asks Daniel Knowles. Makoko, a neighborhood in Lagos, Nigeria's biggest city, is a place that has become famous for its misery. It is a sort of floating slum underneath the third mainland bridge, a 12-kilometer stretch of concrete that connects Lagos Islands to the rest of the city. Once a fishing village, over the years thousands of shacks have been built in Makoko on land reclaimed from the bay by filling it with rubbish. People live in them, crowded 6 to a room. There is no running water. So hundreds of people make a living hauling in plastic containers filled from boreholes on the mainland. Children are bathed outside in buckets. Electricity is provided by generators, which gives the air the tinny taste of diesel. The alleyways reek of human shit. Lagos state government has been trying to get rid of Makoko for years. They send in bulldozers to tear down the shacks and clear the land for developers, but it never stays cleared for long. The slum grows out into the bay. New shacks built with wood are floated onto the water. People keep coming, drawn to the urban jungle by the hope, however slim, of making it big. Nobody knows how many people live there, but it could be as many as 250,000. 60 years ago, that was the entire population of Lagos. Now it's a sprawling, filthy megacity of perhaps 7 million. People overwhelm in its every space. They make their homes where they can, beneath underpasses, in derelict buildings, anywhere, without the thuggish security guards the rich hire to keep them out. Africa is the world's youngest continent. Between the Sahara and South Africa, in most countries, a majority of the population are children. In only a few countries is the median age higher than 20. This is not because people die young. For the most part, they don't anymore. It is the result of an enormous population boom. Then saying that in 50 years or so, more than half of the world's entire population growth will be in Africa. 2/5 of the world population will live on the continent. In the West, our countries continue to grow because life expectancy is going up, and thanks to immigration, eventually, since we all must die, they will start shrinking. By the end of the century, African babies will be a majority of those born. Africa could even be the only continent with a growing population. So what does this mean? The more optimistic business people I meet at conferences like to talk happily of a demographic dividend. that will make them lots of money. Lots of Africans means a growing market after all. Africa will have something the rest of the world will lack, youth. Well, perhaps, but the trouble is that Africa is not getting richer, at least not fast. Just 10% of the world's population now lives below the World Bank's poverty line of $1.90 a day, down from 35% in 1990, but Africa is the exception. Over that same period, the number of extremely poor on the continent went up by almost 50 million. And they are not the fly-bitten, ignorant victims of famine we in the West grew up seeing on our televisions. They are urbanized, increasingly speak English and French, addicted to their mobile phones, and they are ambitious. Western governments fear that this huge poor continent is a bomb waiting to explode underneath Europe. Thousands of frustrated young men are already making the journey westwards in rickety boats from Libya. But what if millions did? And then says, what has fostered this complacency? Africa today is actually less self-sufficient in food than ever before. Talking about a political rally he covered in the Rift Valley where everybody was very poor, but yet 4 helicopters descended on the place. And then saying, where are the factories, the call centers, the big firms which could actually give jobs and hope to the frustrated young people? Urbanization ought to provide hope and industrialization, but it is not doing enough. Most African cities are like smaller versions of Lagos. People live in dysfunctional slums where the only jobs are servicing the whims of the elite. They work extremely hard just to survive. Water is carried, electricity is absent, food is cooked over open fires, disease is kept in check largely by cheap antibiotics. Meanwhile, the African rich opt out. They cope with potholes by driving Land Cruisers. When they get sick, they fly to Europe. Their children are educated at the best schools in the West. If you were a young African, would you put up with that, or would you revolt? And what happens then? At some point in the next few decades, we're going to find out. He's right, and I wrote about this in November, actually, 2014. I was talking about Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa, and I said, what's clear is that a very young, very informed, very connected African youth demographic, many characterize this as a demographic dividend, which for beautiful Blaise Compaoré turned into a demographic terminator. And I said this is set to alter the existing equilibrium between the rulers and the subjects, and that a rebalancing has begun, but it's never going to be linear. Breaking President Isaiah announces Eritrea to dispatch a delegation to Ethiopia. We will send a delegation to Addis Ababa to gauge current developments directly and in depth and to chart out a plan for continuous future action, he said. And I take you back to 29th of March when Prime Minister Abiy said this, "It is time, let's build a wall of love between Ethiopia and Eritrea." As I said previously, he's moving so fast, Abiy Ahmed, that everything around him looks static and wooden. And it is an example of his sophisticated brain. Look at this. This is what he said about Tigray. The TPLF is much disliked by the majority, has been dominant within the Ethiopian Federation. And he said the people of Tigray are still begging for a drop of water. The TPLF is not the people of Tigray. And then on the financial side, I said he's read the writing on the wall and hence his economic pivot, which caught his own party and the rest of the world off guard. He said, we are in debt, we have to pay back, but we can't. And secondarily, we aren't able to finish projects we have started. Kaguta Museveni, what you people call history, I call current affairs, because I was there. Around 1/5 of trade in East Africa is intra-regional, indicating the high level of integration in the EAC and the diversity of the export base. Standard Chartered sees Africa making a bigger contribution over time. This is their chairman, Jose Vinales. If they do the right thing, they'll grow faster than other countries which are more advanced. Help Africa contribute more to the group, but for that to happen, the future needs to become the present. we are starting to see positive signs. My hope is that Africa breaks with some of the constraints that have prevented its sustained growth. For that, there is a need for policies to strengthen institutions. The continent is home to some of the world's largest growing economies, with an IMF fund projecting Ethiopia will expand 10.9% this year. Digital through mobile is something which is fundamental, not just for efficiency and economic progress, but also for financial inclusion, he said. South African all share down 4.79% this year. Dollar rand trying to stabilize at 13.757. I think we got to 1460 under Zuma on a real big sell-off, but we really softened up there. Nigerian all shares up 0.95% year-to-date. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 13.61% year-to-date. Abraj has agreed to sell a big chunk of its fund business to Colony Capital. Colony Capital will acquire Abraj's Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, and Turkey funds management business. Kenya among top 10 countries at risk of debt distress because of fragmented structural adjustment and indiscriminate borrowing. And this is what I was saying, go-go days when you just stuck up your hand and asked for $500 million and got $2 billion are behind us, and it's high time our policymakers got with the program. Nairobi all shares down 0.62% year to date. We've fallen 13.446% since setting a record high on April the 5th. NSE 20 is down 10.55% year to date. I had lunch with Billy Owino yesterday of TransUnion, and he said to me, in Kenya, out of 6.5 million active digital credit borrowers, 3.5 million have a default listing at the bureau. Quite shocking, isn't it, when you think about it? And then finally, one of the last links is a link to any share price. If you want to inquire into the valuations of any share price at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, just use that final link on Rich Wrap-Ups. Thank you for stopping by.